Hey, welcome to Draft Academy. My name is Mike. In this tutorial, I want to talk to you about working with strings in JavaScript. Now, a lot of times when you're using JavaScript, you're going to want to work with text, and text can be encoded inside of these literal strings, and then we can use them, we can store them in variables, and we can do different things with them. We can modify them, we can find out information about them. So I want to show you guys how to work with strings inside of JavaScript. And the most basic string is just two quotation marks and text inside of it. And over here I have this document.write command, and inside I'm passing this string, right? So it's just text inside of quotation marks. And with strings, you can also use a single quotation mark. So instead of just a double one, you can use a single one. It doesn't really matter. JavaScript doesn't really care. And you can see that this is getting printed out over here on the screen. And strings are really great. A lot of times you're going to want to store information inside of a string form. In addition to just placing a string over here, I could also place this inside of a variable. So I'm going to create a variable up here, and we'll just say var phrase is equal to, and now I'm just going to put in that string. So this is a way that we can store a string value inside of a variable. So now if we want to access this string, we can just access this variable called phrase. So if I wanted to print this out, I could just put phrase there in that document.write command, and it's going to stay the same, right? Because we're printing out this same thing. And if I want to access some information about the string, I can just say dot, and then I can type in like the type of information I want to access. And string has one value we can access, which is called length. So if I just say phrase, which is the name of the string variable, dot length, this is going to tell me how many characters are inside of this string. So this should print out 16 because this string has 16 characters inside of it. If I was to like change the length of the string, then the length is going to be modified as well. So using the length of a string can be really useful in JavaScript. There's a lot of circumstances where you're going to want to figure out like how long a particular string is. In addition to accessing the length, we can also use things called methods on strings. And a method is essentially like a little snippet of code that we can call, which will perform certain operations on our strings. And there's a bunch of these different methods, and they'll do different things for us. They'll either like modify our string, or they'll give us specific information about our string. And methods are really cool, and there's a bunch of these different methods that we can use with strings. And the way we access a method is similar to accessing this length attribute. We can say dot, and then I want to type in the name of the method that I want to access. And one of the most basic methods inside of JavaScript for strings is converting a string to upper or lower case. So we can say, basically just type out the name of the method we want to access, and there's one called to uppercase. And when I'm using a method, I want to use these open and close parentheses after. So I'm typing out this dot, the name of the method that I want to use, in our case to uppercase, and then these open and close parentheses. So what will happen now is this string will get printed out, but instead of just printing out normally, it'll print out uppercase. So now you see it's entirely uppercase. And that's because this method is basically taking the string, it's taking this phrase string, it's converting it to uppercase, and then that whole thing is getting printed out. I could also use lowercase, so we could say to lowercase, and that's going to do exactly what you think. It's going to convert everything to lowercase. But with these methods, you can also give them specific information. So you can give these methods information, and then with that information, they can give you different things, or they can do different things. So there's another method here called char at. And basically what this will do is we can pass this a number. So we can put inside of these parentheses a number. And a lot of times people will call this a parameter. So you'll say we can pass this method a parameter. Basically, we're just giving it some information. So we can give this char at method a number. And basically what it'll do it'll return the character at that specific index in the string. So if I was to give this a 1, you might think that that will give us the character at the first position in the string. So if I save this, you're probably thinking, okay, this will give us this S. But actually what it's going to do is it's going to give us a T. If I was to give this a 2, you might think, well, 2 should give us the T, right? Because it's 1, 2, but actually this is going to give us that R. So this is returning a character at a specific index, but it seems to be returning the wrong character. And this kind of brings us to a core concept with strings in JavaScript, which is indexes. And down here, I have this little index chart here, and I want to show you guys this. I'm just going to uncomment this really quick. When we're dealing with strings in JavaScript, and specifically when we're dealing with the indexes of those strings, JavaScript starts counting the letters of the string from 0. So if I was to ask you, like, count out the letters inside of this string, you might say, well, here's 1, 2, 3, 4. But when JavaScript indexes a string, when JavaScript counts out the characters in a string, it starts with 0. So it says 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I'm using JavaScript and I ask JavaScript to give me the first character in the string, instead of giving me this A, it's going to give me this 1. If I ask JavaScript to give me the 0th character in the string, it's going to give me the A. So that's kind of like a little bit of a idiosyncrasy with JavaScript, and it's actually the same with most programming languages, as they start their indexes from 0. So they start counting from 0. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're using your JavaScript. So we can actually come back over to this char at, and now you'll know like what index you need to pass. So if I pass a 0 into here, now it should return that S, right? If I pass a 3 into here, it's going to give me 0, 1, 2, 3. It's going to give me this I. So that's how you can use that character at function in order to get specific characters at specific indexes. You can also use another method, which is kind of like the opposite of this. So I could say index of, and now instead of passing this a number, I want to pass this a letter. And what this will do is it'll tell me the index of that letter inside of this string. So if I pass this an S, actually we'll make it a capital S, this should return 0 because S is at the 0th location in the string. If I pass this an R, this should return 0, 1, 2. It should return 2 because R is at the 2nd index. That's exactly what it does. So you can use this index of method to figure out where specific characters are inside of your string. And what this will do is it'll give you the index of the first one. So for example, I have 2 O's up here in the word cool. This is going to give me the index of this first O. And you can see it's 13. There's also another method which is similar, but it's last index of. And so this should return the last index of something. So this will return, instead of 13, it'll return 14. So it'll return the last index of a given thing. And if in here, if you pass a character that's not in the string, so for example, if I pass this as Z, this is going to give me a -1. So it'll give you a -1 if the character isn't in the current string. So that's the basics of indexes with strings, and then also using that char at and that index of function. Those are going to be really useful when you're writing your JavaScript and working with strings. There's also another really cool method which is called substring. And this is a method which is, you can just type it out like this, substring. And instead of just taking one input, instead of taking one parameter, this is actually going to take 2 parameters. And the first parameter is going to be a number, and this is going to be the index that we want to start at. So substring is basically going to take a section of your string, so like one part of the string, and print it out. And we can define which part of the string we want substring to print out. And the first thing is going to be the starting index. So where do we want to start grabbing this string? So I can say 0, and this will just start grabbing the string here. And then I can pass this another parameter. And to do that, I'm just going to type a comma, and now I can put in the other parameter that I want to pass in. And this is going to be the index where we want to stop grabbing the string. So if I said, for example, 3, this will grab the string from 0 up to 3. And it's actually not going to include this third index. So substring is going to grab 0, 1, 2, and it's going to stop when it gets to 3. So it's not going to grab this I, it's just going to grab str. So over here, you'll see we're just having str. So I could change this. If I wanted, I could start this at like 4, and I could grab all the way up to 9, but again, not including the 9th character. And it'll, grab all of that. So you can use substring to grab a specific part of a string. And you can also use these methods together. So if I wanted, inside of this substring method, I could actually pass it the result of another method. So what I could say is, let's say that I wanted to grab this cool word right here, right? So I wanted to grab only this word from the string. What I could do is I could pass in, instead of just passing in numbers, I could pass in the results of other methods. So I could say here, we want to start grabbing this at this C character. So what I could say is I could say phrase dot index of C. And remember, phrase dot index of C is going to return the location of the first C in the string, which is this C inside of cool. And then over here, I want to grab this all the way up till the end of the string. So I can say phrase.length. And now what this will do is it'll grab the string from C all the way to the end of the string. And so you'll see here now we just get this word cool. And so you can use that with a bunch of these different things. So if I wanted to grab, for example, R cool instead of just cool, I could come over here and change this from a C to an A, and now it'll grab R cool. So you can use these methods inside of other methods. Like I can pass the result of a particular method into another method as a parameter, and you can do cool things like that. There's also another really cool method which I want to show you guys, and it's called ends with. So this is an example where a method will give us a Boolean value. So I can say phrase dot ends with, and in here I can just pass a string. And so what I can do is I can give this a value and it'll tell me whether or not the string ends with that value. So if I was to type in here cool, this is going to return true. So we're going to get a value of true back because the string ends with cool. But if I returned cools like that, this should give us false because the string doesn't end with that. There's also another one which is similar to this, which is includes. And basically we're doing the same thing. So I can pass in a string and it'll tell me if that string is inside of phrase. So I could say like strings, and this should return true. So I could also include like another variable. So if I made a variable here and we'll just call it text, and I set it equal to R cool, what I could do then is I could pass in this text variable as a parameter. So I could say text, and this should return true because R cool is included in this string. So you can really like mix and match these different things, but really the core concept is that we're using a method, which we use by dot and then the name of the method, on this string. We can pass this method specific information, and using that information, it'll be able to give us specific values back. So it'll be able to return to us different information or different values. In this case, it's returning a true or a false value. In other cases, it returns a number. In other cases, it just returns another string. And so these can be really flexible. Another thing I want to show you guys is how you can concatenate strings. And concatenation is basically the process of taking a string and appending another string onto it. And this is really simple. So what I could do is I could take this phrase and I could combine it with text. And I can do that with a plus sign. So I can just say phrase plus text, and JavaScript will know that we want to concatenate these two strings together. So you'll see now over here we just get these two strings together. And you'll see like this is looking a little weird because there's not a space here. So if I added a space here, then this will look a little bit better. Another thing I can do is just put in actual text. So if I got rid of this space, instead I could add in another string into here. So I could just put an actual space, and now we'll have that same space over here. So you can combine variables with like strings using this plus sign, and obviously you need a plus sign on either side of the string. So I want to point you guys to a resource. This is w3schools.com, and if you just type in JavaScript string reference W3 Schools into Google, this will pop up. And this is a page that has basically just a listing of all of the methods that you can use with these strings. So you can see a couple of these we used in this lesson, but there's a bunch of them here. So what you want to do is just really practice playing around with these strings, and you can do exactly what I did, which is just practice printing out different strings and using different methods. And you can get a listing of them from this website, or there's also a bunch of other websites that will list them out. So that's the basics of strings. I hope you guys learned something, and I hope you're able to leverage strings inside of your JavaScript. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to Draft Academy to be the first to know when we release new content. Also, we're always looking to improve, so if you have any constructive criticism or questions or anything, leave a comment below. Finally, if you're enjoying Draft Academy and you want to help us grow, head over to draftacademy.com/contribute and invest in our future.